Okay, hi, this is Davis Peterson, and I'm going to show my part of the front-end project that we're working on for Computer Science 2100. And for my part of the project, I had to create a form that would search for a book by title. And here's the use case that I had to fulfill. Basically, I'll just read through it quickly. The borrower accesses the inventory system with the borrower account. Some of this, by the way, is some of the brainstorming that we did early on. So not all of this applies to it. But basically, the borrower will use the form to search for a book by the title. And then the borrower will enter, part of the book's title, and then click a search button. Then the system will retrieve all the books that will retrieve all of the books that have a title that match the entered search words, and then the results will display things like the title, the instructor, author, and availability. So let's first look at the stored procedure for this. This is the actual SQL that goes on in the database when this form is used, and we'll look at the form right here. So if I run this is our group project, and mine is under this button. So this is the search by title form, and how it works, we'll look into the C# code here soon, but you type in the title, you click the search button, and then all of the data appears here. So I'll actually run it. So this is one title that we have the selection, and see it received. We received the results for that. So the selection, instructors Chuck Kuntz, author Jen Coy, and it is reserved. So reserved is true. Now if we want to look at the code for this, we'll step through this and then we'll go back to the stored procedure. So first what happens is the event that fires everything is the search button click event. And what's happening is in here is if there is no text in the text box, it will show a message box prompting the user to enter a title. So if I delete this and I say search, there we go. Please enter a title in the text box. It gives us a little message. Otherwise, the click event will call this function called populate data grid, and it has a parameter passed in, and it's the text in the search box. So if we go, here is that method right here, populate data grid, and the string title name. First we have to, everything's wrapped in a try-catch blocks so that we can catch any error, and if there is an error, it shows a message box. But we won't expect any errors. So here's the connection to the SQL Server database, and as you can see, we added this using line right here so that we can use the API for the database. And we're creating a new connection, and first we're connecting to the local database on this machine, and we're specifically connecting to the Project 3 database with the user ID SA and this password. Then we are going to initialize an object, a SQL command, and finally we'll declare an object, the object reader, SQL data reader, and I'll explain why I chose a data reader in a minute. Then we just set properties of the SQL command. So in this case we're using a stored procedure, so the command type is stored procedure. This is the actual name of the stored procedure here. And here is the parameter value that we're adding. So all of that is basically how to set up the entire SQL connection. The connection is open, and here is where the command is executed, and this is calling to the database stored procedure, which is this. So we'll look at this now. Here's the name, search book by title, and just as we saw, it has a parameter, search title. And so this is the text that the user entered into the text box, and it's a varchar. And now we have a couple variables to declare, the num of matches and title name, and we'll see how those play in a second. But the important part to notice here is that we're going to declare a table, and this is just a very temporary table. It's not actually put into the list of tables in here. It's just its scope is only within the stored procedure, and we'll be storing data in there later on. So first we're going to use the search title given in the parameter, and we're going to select the number of titles that have a title name like the search title. If it's 0, then there were no matches found, and we'll simply just print that and the stored procedure will end. Otherwise, we will do the following. First, we're going to declare a cursor that will select all of the title names that match, and we use these wildcard characters here, basically demonstrate mean that everything before, anything that's before this word and anything that after this word can match for the title name. So it will collect all of the title names and we'll loop through this cursor so that we can use each of the title names right here, like at title name. That's what we're storing into the cursor. And we will search for a book based on the title name. And it will join all of these tables because we need all of these to find out things like the instructor first name and last name, which are combined to be just instructor. Then the author first name and last name, which is combined to just be a column called author. And then the books.reserved column. So notice that all of this is inserted into the output table that was declared up here. And therefore, each time it loops through here, it adds more rows to this table. And I chose to do this because otherwise it would make a bunch, if I just simply selected, it would output a bunch of separate tables. And I didn't want to have to work through, I didn't want to have to work with a bunch of tables with like just 1 or 2 rows in it. So instead, I inserted each of these into a temporary table, and then once it goes through the while loop, it will select all of the data in that table, and it will create one large table for the result. Finally, if anything, if any error occurs, all of this is wrapped in a try, and if an error occurs, it will simply print an error. Nothing else really happens. So let's go back to the C# code. So we just executed this SQL Server stored procedure, And now we're going to read the data. And first we're going to initialize a data table so that we can build a table with all of the data from the stored procedure and then put it into our data grid view, which is this right here. So we need to add into this table all of the column names, title, instructor, author, reserved. And here we're going to read the data with the SQL data reader. Now I chose to use a SQL data reader instead of a dataset object because the dataset is used to manipulate the data, and I didn't need to do that. I just needed to read the data and display it. So here we're going to read through each of the items in the data reader and assign them to each of these rows, and then finally that row will be added to the table. And once all of the rows are added to the table, first, if there aren't any matches, then it will display that no matches were found. But if there are matches, then the data grid view data source becomes the data table. And then finally, the object connection is closed. So let's see it once again. Let's say I type in Willy Wonka, nothing should pop up, no matches found, so nothing's displayed in the table. And then I can type in lion, and it will show me the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.